Thank you very much for joining me on another edition of Gin with Gwynne. I am Oliver Gwynne, and this is where I ramble about marketing, data, and philosophy. This week, we're talking about a huge brand that almost went bankrupt, was saved, and then almost went bankrupt again because of the thing that saved it originally. And when you look at most big brands, they're not very stable. They have a tendency of almost going extinct like every 5 and 10 years, the likes of Disney and Apple. And then this week, we're talking about LEGO. So when you think about LEGO, you're probably thinking of action figures and superheroes, right? No, but that's actually what saved LEGO. In the 90s, they had a bit of a wayward approach. They were very threatened by computer games and technology coming out, and so they abandoned this very long process of R&D to get something on the shelf, and instead they decided to favor sort of what they call craze products. So it was attuned to what was popular at the time, to get something on the shelf, and maybe it would only have a shelf life of 1 or maybe 2 years. And that sounds good, doesn't it? That sounds like customer closeness and action, listening to what customers want, making a product that fits that bill, and rushing it to market pretty quickly. But in 2003, this led them to owning the world as far as everybody was concerned. They had the Star Wars brand. Episode 1 was very popular. They had Harry Potter, and they were seemingly crushing it. They were the #1 toy, right? No. Behind the scenes, sales were plummeting, and nobody could really understand why. And so one guy single-handedly kind of saves LEGO at this time with Bionicle. Pictures on screen right now. So Bionicle doesn't look like LEGO, but it was sort of born of the LEGO Technic brand. And it worked on the principles of an action figure much more than traditional LEGO sets. So if you look at something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, if you look at something like Power Rangers, essentially what you are paying for there is the exact same toy 4 or 5 times in a different colorway and with different weapons. And Bionicle fits that mold very, very well. It's the same toy, but with a different mask and with a different sword. And it makes a lot of sense from a strategic point of view, Bionicle, because while sales of Harry Potter dipped in between movies, as we might expect, Bionicle was owned by LEGO. It was their own original story. And so they could control the distribution of that. And I'm pretty sure they timed it so that Harry Potter would come out at Christmas and Bionicle would come out in the summer. And so they were able to make sales on that. And because they're producing less parts for Bionicles, because it's basically the same toy 6 times, there's a higher profit margin in there. And to cement the story of Bionicle, they produced comics, books, video games, movies, and events at the LEGO store. And I remember at the time, this is back in 2001 when it was released, the internet was not in everybody's homes. And so I remember my brother was really into Bionicle, and we only just started to get the internet at my home at that point. And so we were so excited when we could finally look at the code and see what the secret thing was online that you could unlock. But that was still a very new and interesting thing at the time that was not so common as it is sort of today. So we go to 2003. LEGO flirts with bankruptcy, but 25% of their company's total revenue and 100% of its profits are tied into Bionicle, something that only started 2 years ago. But the problem with that is it's been on the shelves for 2 years, and already they're starting to run out of ideas. How did they keep this brand alive that nobody knew about? They released a shiny version of the Bionicle. They released Bad Guys, but already they know that the returns on this is fleeting unless they keep up this momentum of new content feeding into new product lines. And of course, all of this has a cost associated with it. So in 2004, LEGO almost goes bankrupt. They post a loss of 174 million. Vice President of Marketing Mads Nipper says, "We continue to invest as if the company were growing strongly. We failed to realize that we were on a slippery path. Children were getting less and less time to play. Some of the Western markets had fewer and fewer children, so play trends changed and we failed to change." And in the middle of this time, they introduced a new CEO. And I think I'm right in saying he was the first CEO that was not connected to the original family that started LEGO, who had been in charge of LEGO the entire time. So I'm going to say this name wrong. Jürgen Vig Nordstrom stepped in to try and save the company. But how do you save a company with thousands of employees, hundreds of different lines, and a surprisingly diverse customer base. Data. So what data did they look at? Well, the first area was, of course, cost cutting, an inevitability if you're in a stage where you're flirting with bankruptcy for LEGO. And it's very easy sometimes to look at things in a capex kind of way and just cut those. But because they had data in every single part of the business, from manufacturing to product line to sales, they were able to make smarter cuts. And what they discovered was, because in the 90s they produced craze products, so if pirates were popular, they made 5 pirate sets that year. They were also making a lot of custom bricks for those sets that were only for those specific sets. So specific parts were being manufactured in small numbers. And with specific parts, you need the molds, you need the production, you need the designs, you need people to work them, all of those kind of things. And so one of the major things that they did was strip back their production to a much more limited selection of bricks. And the CEO challenged people, said, hey, we don't need to produce a bumper part for cars. We can innovate. How would you make that otherwise? That was the challenge that went out in all future sets. And that was kind of inspired by Bionicle, because you had a lot less limited parts being manufactured, which meant it was more profitable. But the other side of Bionicle was, because they were producing games and TV shows and all these kind of things, they decided to hire people internally. And so one of the cuts that was made was to those people. They decided, hey, we are a manufacturing business of primarily bricks. Let's focus on that. And they decided to outsource all of those parts of the business, because those people were quite expensive. It was difficult to find them. And that's not the niche. They had, a very small team of video game engineers. Why have that on your payroll when you can outsource that to specialists? In time, they did also relocate some of the manufacturing to Mexico, which improved margins further. But I'm pretty sure that Denmark is still the home of LEGO, and it's still where they are based today. When they looked at product data and incorporating market research, they saw that their most popular sets in recent history had been the tie-in to Star Wars Episode 1 specifically. And so they started actively seeking other pop culture brands to partner with, which quickly became the most profitable source of income. In 2008, 60% of LEGO sales in North America were linked to licensed play sets. And that has been the catalyst for things like the LEGO Batman movie, for example, which was very, very profitable for them today. And if you go to LEGO today, 90% of the product line is based on characters, and they've gone into almost every area that you can think of. You can get Back to the Future, you can get Sonic the Hedgehog. That's been a very profitable area for them. The next area was customer closeness. They started a website called LEGO Ideas, and here you can submit an idea for a playset, and if you get 10,000 social media supporters, I think this is still true today, LEGO will review your product and then decide to send it into production. And on November the 25th, 2019, they acquired Bricklink, which was the world's largest LEGO fan community. And so they were really keen on closing the feedback gap to get more direct access to their fan base. They also started a LEGO loyalty program, and they expanded the amount of LEGO stores they had, which means they were less reliant on their relationship with third-party toy stores, which of course have been going out of business. So LEGO, while they stopped producing as many sets, they still wanted to have a better relationship with customers, more direct relationship with customers, and DTC has been going strong for them. And they put that in place at a time where most of the brands had not gone down that route yet. I know Nike recently criticized that because they spent too much time building Nike.com and customer closeness and all this kind of things, that they have sacrificed brand loyalty in the meantime. But LEGO shows you that as a long-term strategy, that can still work by focusing and getting the fundamentals of that early. They've probably been more successful for things like the LEGO movie now. Marketing analytics was the next area that they looked at. So once they had a clear strategic direction of the company, they had popular toys, the next step was for them to revamp the data for the marketing. So LEGO were one of the first brands, like major brands, to implement attribution across their entire global business, which is a huge, huge undertaking. Let's not take that for granted. It sounds an easy thing to do, but it's really not. So they work with, a wide variety of partners, channels in different countries, and they needed them to report back like for like the same metrics. So despite a 2009 recession, Mads Nipper said that they were delivering twice the return on sales of any competitor simply because they understand where to spend their marketing money better. And they were able to compare like for like different areas, different territories, different play sets, all this kind of stuff. But that only came from a horrible process, which took about 5 years of standardizing metrics across the Lego company. And it's still something that I see today. It's really painful when we work with companies to say, hey, I need you to standardize everything. And what's the definition for this? But if you don't have that baseline in play, then it's really difficult to optimize. And so what is our conclusion here? I think the main thing for me is that you're in a hot button situation. Lego could have ceased to exist. The CEO has 6 months to save the company. And I'm sure at the time, him spending what will have been quite a lot of money in data analyst. This is 2001. It's not like today where we've got all these tools that make all these things really easy. I imagine at the time that was quite controversial, and I'm sure he had to fight a lot of people for it. He's the first CEO that's not associated with the family that started Lego. He's thinking about things like setting up a factory in Mexico, which will have been a big worry at the time. I can't imagine the kind of conversations he's having, but installing the basics of analytics throughout the company in that time saved Lego. And it ultimately led to the insights that not only saved Lego, not only put in the foundations that they needed, that meant that it could then be a huge powerhouse success. And things like the Lego Movie, the Lego Movie 2, the Batman Lego Movie, the Ninjago movie could happen today. But it all started because they had the painful process of embedding analytics throughout their business and throughout their marketing and throughout their partners. So if you today are thinking about data and analytics, I say to you this: yes, it will be painful. Yes, it will be initially expensive, but the returns will be forever. Once you've got everybody to attribute the same way for marketing, it's not going to change. You'll be able to do that forever and with only small tweaks. Once you've embedded these things, the pain goes down and you've got the data. So that is how Lego saved itself from bankruptcy, through data. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you tune in next week for more Gin with Gwynne.